Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, Ropo bond was issued by Babangona, which has now been subscribed by the DFID. Well, can you shed more light on this?
Sure. I think really the key role that the Ropo bond, the Raise Out of Poverty bond, plays is to help to support the working capital requirements of smallholder farmers. We believe that in Nigeria today, the working capital requirements of smallholder farmers is a $20 billion opportunity today. We expect that to grow. This is just the first step. We expect that by working with groups such as DFID, we can eventually grow this opportunity to bring in other investors.
And you just said an opportunity to bring in other investors. Can you shed more light on if all the investors are, if it's open for all investors to come in?
It is open for all investors. I think right now the key thing we're looking for investors to share our vision, and so we encourage all investors who might be interested in simultaneously getting a good return on their investment, while at the same time lifting thousands, if not millions, of people out of poverty to reach out to us.
All right then. Well, Dorio Partners, you've finances the working capital requirement of smallholder farmers in Kaduna State.
Correct.
Now, what exactly is the procedure, and why just Kaduna?
Well, I think the key thing for raising a bond like Robo Bond is a big step, but really to effectively create a mechanism for channeling capital to create impact, the most important thing is the distribution channel for that capital. And that's what we've been actively working on to develop over the last 3 to 4 years. Where in Kaduna right now, we've got a mechanism where we can deploy capital to smallholder farmers. We've developed a very strong risk mitigation mechanism that right now our repayment rate is 99.3%. We expect that actually to even get better. And so that's because we've focused on developing risk mitigation mechanisms that protect our investors.
But then why Kaduna?
Well, Kaduna is a great opportunity for smallholder farmers. It's very large. First off, Kaduna is very large, about 5 million hectares. There's a high population of smallholder farmers who are actively, how do I say this, real farmers. These are individuals who typically have anywhere from 2 to 3 hectares. They're highly committed and have extensive experience growing the crops that we tend to finance, which are maize, soybeans, and now we're looking at rice.
All right. Are there plans to go beyond Kaduna?
Most definitely. Okay. Most definitely. I think we've actually, not just beyond Kaduna, we've been approached by some of our offtake partners to look at other parts of West Africa, so on and so forth. But fundamentally, we believe that in the first step is to create a scalable model. Once you refine that model and get it to the point where it's scalable, we expect to continue to grow that. By 2020, we expect to be financing somewhere around 1 million hectares of smallholder farmers' fields.
Well, I know for you, it's the agricultural space for now. Can we expect to see similar initiatives for other sectors, going forward?
Well, we believe, social impact bonds come in many flavors. And we believe that there's a tremendous opportunity, not just in agriculture, but also education and health to address these needs while providing investors a compelling investment opportunity.
All right. Now, the franchise developed, by Dorio Partners seeks to improve the livelihood of smallholder farmers by franchising grassroots level farmer organizations, known as, I guess you call them trust groups.
Correct.
Now, how has the feedback been, especially the partnership with the private sector?
Well, the feedback's been wonderful. Quite frankly, our key offtake partners have expressed interest to increase their purchasing from us up to 5-fold next year. Our farmers, we are quite frankly excited. I spent the last week literally traveling around the fields. Our farmers are probably about 4 or 5 weeks into the cropping cycle. The fields are looking beautiful. Our farmers are excited. It's one of the reasons why I have a little bit of a tan. And so the reality is we've developed such a compelling value proposition for our farmers that this year we had, if we wanted to grow 50-fold, we had that many farmers apply. But we actually, as I said, we believe in focus. We only grew about 10-fold, and we believe that's a manageable growth rate.
Well, lately the focus on export or trade in within Africa and outside Africa concerning agriculture has moved rather beyond just the mere production or farming as it is to adding value to agricultural produce moving outside the continent, for instance. So let's look at what your companies, any interest in looking at processing, for instance, of agricultural products rather than just stopping at farming?
Well, the reality is we see ourselves as a key strategic partner for processors. If you look at most processors in Nigeria, one of their top 3 challenges is access to a reliable supply chain that provides quality, cost-effective products. That's what we deliver. And quite frankly, our goal as Durio Partners is to create millions of jobs, 10 million jobs by 2030. We see the job creation opportunity as well as the returns opportunity actually more in the upstream, in the production, and that's where we're focusing right now.
All right, let's look at the role of the government here. What kind of challenges have you come across lately? Because when the question comes up about the issue of processing agricultural produce, farmers keep saying rather than put these processing plants in the urban areas, bring them to the rural area, bring it to the farm, so it leaves the soil and goes into the machine. But now let's look at the government's role in this in terms of infrastructure. Is it well positioned to drive this new vision, Leaving Africa?
Well, I believe the government has a very good strategy around this. I think they've taken a few key steps to implement them. I think one of the key strategies the government is trying to use is a model they call a staple crop processing zone, where processors are incentivized to actually develop and invest in processing in rural communities that would then be tied to smallholder farmers in models similar to ours. That's still in early days. We think that strategy has a lot of potential, and we encourage the government to continue to drive that.
Well, you mentioned something about the supply chain. Let's look at the distribution chain. I mean, it's one thing to grow, it's another thing to process, and it's another thing to actually meet the the end consumer to start with. Now, while the call has been made for us to export processed food outside Africa, there's also the call for us to even trade within Africa itself, especially in agriculture. But then, we still have this bottlenecks that, we have to take care of. Now, what kind of bottlenecks have you come across, in your line of business, which you feel is impeding intra-Africa trade, in terms of agriculture?
Well, I think the key one is really around ensuring that the borders are set up to facilitate trade. The reality is that border crossings and things like that, it's a little bit challenging. The rules tend to be a little bit, unclear. And so we believe that creating specific, making rules very clear, very transparent, and enabling partners such as ourselves who can work with our fellow businesses in Niger, in Chad, Mali, so on and so forth, who actually, quite frankly, are already purchasing a significant portion of Nigeria's produce, to make that trade, instead of being in the grey market, let's get it out and clear in the real market.
Well, let's look at access to finance for the farmers. Banks have really come to admit, the agricultural sector, well, it's quite risky, putting it in that way. But do you think agriculture can really get to the level which everyone is really anticipating if the banks do not see in agriculture beyond just being a risk venture?
Well, quite frankly, I have to give credit to certain of the banks. We had 3 key banking partners that have really come to the table to support our activity. Everybody from FCMB to Diamond Bank to Keystone Bank, and they've recognized that yes, there is risk in financing smallholder farmers, but in reality, with the entity like Babangona, what we've done is fundamentally de-risked the financing of smallholder farmers. We take risk exceptionally seriously. We have what we call our 7 levels of risk mitigation that address really the 3 key risks of lending to smallholder farmers, which is willful default, diversion of funds, and then low productivity to farmer error or acts of God. And so what that has enabled is we provide a platform to the banks to really provide significant amount of capital.
Now, let's look at Africa itself, and the potential Africa has in using agriculture to grow its economy in the long run. What do you see?
Agriculture is it, quite frankly. At the end of the day, we have to recognize that no economy has been able to basically leapfrog over developing a strong agricultural economy to move into other sectors. And the reality is because agriculture forms that base of any industrialized economy, providing key raw materials to then enable that economy to grow. So, and for us, it's really all about jobs. And agriculture is Nigeria's job creation engine. Hands down, agriculture could solve Nigeria's spiraling youth unemployment issue.